Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Friday, July 18th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today: Israeli tank hits Gaza's Catholic Church, killing 3. So an Israeli military tank on Thursday struck the Holy Family Catholic Church in Gaza City, killing 3 people and wounding at least 9 others. 2 of the dead have been identified as Saad Salame, who is the parish's 60-year-old janitor, and Fumaya Ayad, a 84-year-old woman who was receiving psychosocial support from the Catholic charity Caritas in a tent located at the church. So this is who was killed. 2 of the people out of the 3 who were killed by this Israeli tank shelling. And among the wounded was Father Gabriel Romanelli, the church's priest, who's from Argentina, and he regularly held phone calls with the late Pope Francis. Francis held nightly calls with him, including right before he died. I think it was like 2 nights before he died was the last time he spoke with Romanelli. This picture here is of the woman, the 84-year-old woman who was killed before she succumbed to her wounds. She was brought to the Al-Ali Arab Baptist Hospital. So the Latin Patriarchate the Latin Patriarchate in Jerusalem said in a statement on the attack, quote, "The people in the Holy Family compound are people who found in the church a sanctuary, hoping that the horrors of war might at least spare their lives after their homes, possessions, and dignity had already been stripped away. The Latin Patriarchate strongly condemns this tragedy, and this targeting of innocent civilians and of a sacred place. However, this tragedy is not greater or more terrible than the many others that have befallen Gaza. Many other innocent civilians have also been harmed, displaced, and killed. Death, suffering, and destruction are everywhere," end quote. So Pope Leo XIV also released a statement on the attack saying, quote, "I am deeply saddened to learn of the loss of life and injury caused by the military attack on the Holy Family Catholic Church in Gaza. I renew my call for an immediate ceasefire. Only dialogue and reconciliation can ensure enduring peace," end quote. So the Israeli military claimed that the strike was an accident, but the Latin Patriarch, Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, cast doubt on the IDF statement. He said, quote, "What we know for sure is that a tank, the IDF says by mistake," sorry, I kind of butchered that. Let me start his quote over. "What we know for sure is that a tank, the IDF says by mistake, but we are not sure about this. They hit the church directly. The Church of the Holy Family, the Latin Church. We don't have complete information about what has happened in Gaza today because the communication in Gaza is not that simple," end quote. So this is interesting here. Sources close to the Latin Patriarchate told The Pillar, which is a Catholic news outlet, that internally church authorities were considering the possibility that the tank attack was a direct response to a recent meeting of Christian leaders in the West Bank town of Taiba on Monday. And Taiba is the Christian village that's been under Jewish settler attack. And Pizzaballa and other church leaders released a statement strongly condemning the violence and calling out Israeli authorities for facilitating and enabling the violent settlers. So they're considering the possibility that this was retaliation. And, you know, this isn't World War II. These tanks, as I understand, the Merkava tanks that Israel has are, fire precision-guided munitions. It's not like they're just firing in a general direction during a battle, and it's not like there's big battles taking place in Gaza. And if you see the picture, we have it on the front page. I'll show you when I'm done with the story of the church. You could see the shell struck the roof right next to the cross, and it went through the roof and killed 3 people. So just absolutely horrific. And so then later on Thursday, Netanyahu's office released a statement saying that Israel deeply regrets that a stray ammunition hit Gaza's Holy Family Church. That's the story that they're going with, that it was a stray ammunition. And again, they know exactly where this building is. It's a big church. It's very clearly a church, and it is a small little compound. There's other buildings on the parish grounds. So they know exactly where it is. I just find it extremely hard to believe that it was an accident. And I think we have a lot of reason not to take Israel's word for this. But apparently, so according to Axios, and the White House made comments that were similar, Trump saw the news about the church getting hit and called Netanyahu and asked him about it, and he told him that it was a mistake, and he said, okay, we'll put out a statement saying that. But they're saying that Trump was not happy about it. I wish he would do that with all these atrocities that we see happening in Gaza every single day. So the Holy Family Church is Gaza's sole Catholic church and has previously come under attack by Israeli forces. In December 2024, 2 Christian women at the church were killed and 7 people were wounded by Israeli snipers, an incident Pope Francis at the time condemned as terrorism. The IDF also attacked the nearby St. Porphyrius Greek Orthodox Church. In October 2023, an Israeli airstrike killed 18 Palestinian civilians who were sheltering at this church, and among the dead were relatives of Justin Amash, the former House representative from Michigan. So a funeral was held on Thursday at the St. Porphyrius Church for the 2 of the victims who were both Orthodox Christians. And despite his injuries, Father Romanelli held Mass at the Holy Family Catholic Church later in the day for the repose of the souls of those killed in the attack. So he was already back at it later in the day. Very brave priest who's really in it with his parish. And I think I mentioned, so I follow the church on Facebook, and I look at their posts every day, pretty much. I see, and they always post pictures from the daily masses that they do, and from the rosary. They pray the rosary together every day, and Eucharistic adoration, and everything. And I'm Catholic. I'm sure most of you know that by now, but I relate a lot with this because it's the same things we do at our church that they're doing in Gaza. And over the past week, Father Romanelli has been posting videos, and where you just hear explosions, and in one of them, the door blew open. So there's been heavy strikes around the church for a few days now. But this altar server, a young man named Suhal Shadi Abu Dawood, he's among those injured in the attack, and I believe he's in the hospital. I'm not positive about that, but the church posted asking for prayers for him. And he always stands out to me because he's very tall. If you see pictures of him with the other altar servers and the priests, he's like towering over all of them. So then to see the pictures from the Mass today that Father Romanelli presided over, he was missing from that picture. And it's just it was a little striking to me. So, in this age, it's just like I follow this church and I see every day pictures that they post, and the fact that it's bombed like this is just outrageous. And, it's just horrible. So I hope, there's a lot of attention. I'm seeing a lot of anger from Catholics about this, which is good. And from Catholics, this is really an American thing, but there are some big kind of Catholic figures in the U.S. who are kind of pro-Israel. And I've even seen them come out strongly against this, which, there's just no excuse for this. But hopefully the attention prevents any future attacks on this church, which is sheltering hundreds of people. And if people want to know more about Gaza's Christian population, last year I interviewed Khalil Sayegh, who's a Palestinian Christian from Gaza. He's lived in the West Bank as well. He lost his father and his sister in Gaza. They died, I believe, in 2023. But, we spoke about kind of Palestinian Christians in general in an interview I did for the show. You could find it on YouTube if you scroll down to the interview section. All right, so the next one here, Israeli forces kill 93 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. I just want to show you, if you're watching here, this is the picture. You could see where the shell hit right next to the cross. All right, so the next one here, Israeli forces kill 93 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. So Gaza's health ministry said on Thursday that at least 93 Palestinians were killed and 367 were wounded as a result of Israel's genocidal war over the past 24-hour period, as relentless U.S.-backed Israeli strikes continue. The health ministry said that another body was recovered from the rubble. You see a picture here of a very young girl who was wounded. And it's the same thing. Every single day we see children, very young children, wounded, killed, maimed in this horrific war, this horrific genocide. So I don't have too many details here, kind of just an update on the numbers, but the health ministry said that it recorded a total of 26 aid-related deaths and 32 injuries. So the airstrikes and the killing of aid seekers continues. Most of the news today from Gaza was about the strike on the church, but there was also heavy strikes in other parts of Gaza City that killed 20 people. In Khan Yunis in the south, this is where this girl was wounded. Strikes killed people in tents. There were strikes in central Gaza just across the strip. All right, so the next one here, British surgeon in Gaza reports unprecedented malnutrition. So Nick Maynard, a British surgeon currently working at the Nasser Hospital in Gaza, has told The Telegraph that Palestinians in the besieged enclave are facing unprecedented malnutrition due to the Israeli blockade, and that Israeli snipers are targeting people seeking food near aid distribution sites. Maynard said that the aid sites run by the U.S. and Israeli-backed GHF were death traps, and that IDF snipers were targeting, he said that they're targeting certain body parts on different days, such as heads, the head, legs, or genitals. He's essentially saying that on certain days, you'll get a bunch of casualties from these aid sites, and they're all shot in like kind of the same area. And nearly 900 aid seekers have been killed since the GHF began operating. The British surgeon said that he had operated on many young teenage boys who were wounded near aid sites. He said, quote, "A 12-year-old boy I was operating on died from his injuries on the operating table. He had been shot through the chest," end quote. So this picture here is of a mother and her 5-month-old daughter who has been diagnosed with malnutrition. And as you can tell from the picture, she is starving. And Maynard said that the severe malnutrition has been contributing to preventable deaths among Palestinians receiving surgeries. He said, quote, "The malnutrition that I'm seeing here is indescribably bad. It's much, much worse now than a year ago. The repairs that we carry out fall to pieces. Patients get terrible infections and they die. I have never had so many patients die because they can't get enough food to recover," end quote. So babies have been starving to death in Gaza due to the Israeli restrictions on baby formula, as malnourished mothers cannot produce breast milk. Maynard said that the Nasser Hospital is also running out of intravenous liquid fluids used to treat severely malnourished children, and that 4 infants died of malnutrition at the hospital last week. He said, quote, "I saw a 7-month-old who looked like a newborn. The expression skin and bones doesn't do it justice," end quote. And we've seen a lot of pictures of babies malnourished. Again, this is a 5-month-old baby, just completely skin and bones. All right, so the next one here, getting into Syria, 500 killed in days of violence in Syria's Suwayda. So more than 500 people have been killed after days of clashes, massacres, and Israeli airstrikes in Syria's southern Suwayda province, according to numbers from the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Clashes began between Druze militias and Bedouin tribes, with the al-Qaeda-linked Syrian government quickly intervening against the Druze. Among the dead were 154 civilians, including 83 who, according to the Syrian Observatory, were summarily executed by members of the Defense and Interior Ministries, so Syrian government forces. The observatory counted the deaths of 243 government personnel, so they also took heavy casualties as well, including at least 15 who were killed by Israeli airstrikes. 79 Druze fighters were killed and 18 Bedouin fighters, and 3 members of the Bedouin tribes were also summarily executed by Druze fighters. So they're saying Druze fighters executed at least 3 Bedouin civilians. So the executions of Druze follow a pattern of mass killing of civilians by the new Syrian government, which is led by Ahmed al-Shara, the founder of al-Qaeda in Syria, who rebranded in recent years to gain international support. And of course, his group of jihadists, known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, took power in Damascus in December 2024. And Shara claimed on Thursday that he would protect the Druze minority and that there would be accountability for those who transgressed and abused the Druze people. However, there's been no accountability for the more than 1,500 civilians, mostly Alawites, who were massacred by government-linked fighters back in March. Shara said that the government forces succeeded in restoring stability and that Israel was sowing discord by launching airstrikes. Syrian government troops mostly withdrew from the area on Thursday, though the government accused the Druze of violating the ceasefire, suggesting that the fighting may not be over. The Syrian presidency accused the Druze of conducting horrific violence against Bedouin civilians. They're claiming that the Druze militias are also conducting massacres. According to the observatory, recorded the deaths again of 3 Bedouin civilians who they say were killed by Druze fighters. A Syrian Bedouin commander also told Reuters that Bedouin fighters were launching another offensive against Druze militias despite the ceasefire. He said that the truce only applied to government forces and not them. Israeli airstrikes continued in southern Syria on Thursday, despite the U.S. saying that it does not support the Israeli attacks. According to the Syrian Observatory, an Israeli drone hit a gathering of Bedouin fighters on Thursday. And there is something really despicable to me about, obviously, Israel's intentions are not, they don't have good intentions here by bombing Syria and invading Syria. But out of all the bombings that they do, this is the one that the U.S. tells them that they're against and that they should stop, not the ones that are slaughtering all these kids in Gaza. All right, so the next one here, Netanyahu reiterates demand for South Syria to be demilitarized. So this article is from Jason Ditz. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated his demands that the entire south of Syria, south of Damascus, remain absolutely demilitarized and vowed that Israel will continue to carry out attacks on Syria to enforce that as one of his red lines. Netanyahu also presented a second red line of protecting the Druze. So this is the justification, the pretext that Israel is using. And really what I think this does, they're trying to do here is blow up the chances of any kind of normalization deal with the new Syrian government that the U.S. is pushing for. They wanted just a failed state, a broken up state. So I believe, this fighting, this violence is in Israel's interest. And the Israeli Druze, so you can see this picture here. You had Israeli Druze that live in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, went into southern Syria. Apparently some are still there. Some went back. But this is, again, I think it's pretty clearly like, they're openly just using this as a justification for the occupation of southern Syria. And we see reports of them, pushing further, taking more territory. All right, so the next one here, France and Italy will not buy U.S. weapons for Ukraine. So France and Italy have declined to participate in a plan to purchase U.S. weapons and send them to Ukraine, a scheme that was announced by President Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Monday. France clarified that it's still set on supporting Ukraine with military aid, but wants to prioritize the purchase of European weapons and that it was also dealing with budget constraints. Italy had a similar message and pointed to this Italian-made SAMP-T air defense system that it has already supplied to Ukraine. Reuters reported that some NATO allies were caught off guard by Trump and Rutte's announcement. Rutte claimed that 6 countries, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, and Canada, were already willing to participate in the scheme, but officials from 2 of those nations said that the announcement was the first they had heard of it. A European ambassador told Reuters, quote, "It is my clear sense that nobody has been briefed about the exact details in advance. I also suspect that internally the administration, they are now only beginning to sort out what it means in practice," end quote. So Trump stated that under the plan, billions of dollars worth of U.S. military equipment would be on the way to Ukraine soon, and reports indicated that $10 billion in arms sales were expected in the first wave. But so far, it remains unclear how many weapon sales will actually materialize for this plan, and NATO allies are also struggling to find Patriot air defense systems and interceptors to send to Ukraine. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. and Ukraine discuss weapons for drones deal. So this article is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that he discussed a deal with Donald Trump that would see the U.S. send weapons to Ukraine in exchange for drones. Zelensky described the mega deal in an interview with the New York Post. He said, quote, The people of America need this technology, and you need it to have it in your arsenal. I think this is really a mega deal, a win-win, as they say, end quote. So essentially what he's saying is that Ukraine's going to manufacture drones, which Ukraine has been manufacturing a lot of drones. And they actually got a lot of help from the CIA to get their drone manufacturing off the ground. And I believe the U.S. contributed at least $1 billion for that. But now he's saying, oh, we'll make drones, and you guys definitely need these drones, and so we'll send them to you, and then you send us more weapons. So I don't know if this deal is really gonna materialize either. All right, so the next one here, Russia would target multinational forces in Ukraine. Another one from Kyle. So the Russian Foreign Ministry said that any troops from third countries deployed to Ukraine will become targets. European nations have discussed plans to send their soldiers to Ukraine if a ceasefire with Russia is reached. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova explained that any country that joins a coalition of the willing and deploys troops to Ukraine will become targets. And that's what they've been calling this. This is something they've really stopped talking about this because it's just not realistic. But the UK and France, for a while, we're talking about this idea of sending troops to Ukraine if there's a ceasefire, and saying, that they're going to form a coalition of the willing, which, of course, to me and to most people, I think, that invokes the Iraq War and the term that the U.S. used to convey the countries that were willing to help with the Iraq invasion. So just not good PR there, but the foreign ministry here is essentially just reiterating the position, Russia's position, that if there's foreign troops in Ukraine, they would be a target. All right, so the next one here, Israel kills 2 in South Lebanon strikes. So this is another one from Jason. So Israel carried out multiple drone strikes against southern Lebanon on Thursday, killing 2 people and wounding 2 others. Both of the slain were claimed by the IDF to have been members of Hezbollah. The first strike was in the area near Kafur, killing 1 and wounding 2. About an hour later, a second strike hit a truck near Nakora, killing another person. The IDF issued a statement later and released video of both strikes. So obviously, I don't know why I said obviously, but unsurprisingly, I should say, Israel is claiming that these guys were Hezbollah. One of them was a commander of a naval unit in Hezbollah's Radwan force. But they provided no evidence for this claim. But the Israeli strikes, ceasefire violations in Lebanon continue. All right, so the last story here, the U.S. assessment says Iran could enrich uranium in months. So another one from Kyle at the Libertarian Institute. So an assessment of the damage to Iranian nuclear facilities following U.S. strikes last month concluded that only one site sustained major damage and that the Islamic Republic could resume enrichment operations in a few months. And this is according to a U.S. assessment that was reported on by NBC News. And it also said that the U.S. and Israel are considering additional strikes to destroy the facilities. And so they're saying that Fordo, the one that they hit with the multiple bunker busters, has essentially been destroyed, that it was set back by like 2 years. But the other facilities, not so much. And, it's a big thing that the assessment is that they could resume enrichment in a few months. Iran is saying that they plan to do that they're not going to back down on, their condition that, if the U.S. wants talks, they can't be demanding that we end our enrichment program. So all this stuff is concerning because, this could all happen again. If nothing fundamentally changes with the U.S.-Israel relationship and with the situation with Iran. And Iran is preparing for that. I think it's very clear just from reading Iranian media and the steps that they're taking, they're getting ready for another war. I'm sure Israel is and the U.S. is as well. So unless Trump, and there's chances that stuff like this is leaked to justify another war, to justify another attack. But I think if things don't change, maybe a Gaza ceasefire could calm things down, but unfortunately I don't see that happening. It almost seems inevitable, like this is all going to escalate again into something. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Go check out our viewpoints. One from Dan Steinbach, From Secular Jewish State to a Jewish Herrenvolk Democracy. One from Eric Ross, The Atomic Nightmare, Then and Now. One from Christopher Leonard, Criticizing Netanyahu is not anti-Semitism, it's a moral obligation. One from Matt Wolfson, Trump Makes War the Health of the State. And our spotlight is from Ted Galen Carpenter, Trump Flirts with NATO's Hardliners. So please go check all that out. Again, this picture with this cross here of the damaged church, man, it's just, again, it's just something about following the people on social media like every day. Same thing when journalists get killed or get hurt that, in Gaza, that I follow them and I see them every day, what they're doing. And then to see them get killed or hurt, it's just, it affects you in a way that, things didn't affect people, before the age of social media. Not even before the age of social media, before everybody everywhere is basically has a phone and social media and an internet connection. So it's just a whole different thing. But again, hopefully that attention prevents the more attacks on the church. Unfortunately, that attention is not ending the genocide. Somehow this is all just happening and unfolding before our eyes. So, but anyway, go visit antiwar.com. Even if you watch the show, check out our blog. We have Kyle Anzalone's show, Conflicts of Interest, in there. Ron Paul's show we repost in there. Go check out the lower part of the page. All sorts of stuff. Lots of content at antiwar.com. Even if you listen to the show, you could always support us by sharing this. Tell your friends about antiwar.com. Like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff helps. That's it for me for the week. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Pray for peace, and thanks for listening.